Crusoes, and today there are two exciting things happening. The first is that it's Pride Month, and the second is that Costube is gearing up for a big event called Cozy, or the Costume Symposium, which will happen on August 19th through the 22nd. To celebrate these two things, I picked out some stuff to make a quick project for Pride. I'm going to make some 18th century pockets based on my pride flag, which I'll tell you about in a second. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to answer the 21 questions challenge that has been going around Costube. If you don't recognize this pride flag, it's the agender pride flag. Agender is a gender identity that exists on the non-binary part of the gender spectrum, and it literally means the absence of gender, or outside of gender. This means different things for different people, so let me just tell you a little bit about what it means for me. I have long thought that society's gender roles are assigned in a very stupid way. Personality is not the same thing as gender. Physical characteristics are not the same thing as gender. I don't want to be assigned roles based on my appearance or based on my personality, and instead I would like to choose the roles that I take on and only be assigned gender roles with my consent, and otherwise live outside of other people's expectations of what gender is. I want to be myself first, and anything that I do second. I do call myself woman adjacent or an agender woman because I do still identify a lot with femininity and the life of a woman. I still use she, her pronouns because they feel like mine. They, them doesn't feel like me. And I really only have like two things associated with womanhood that really give me gender dysphoria, and that's the word ma'am, which is really unfortunate because I live in the South and it's literally ingrained in everyone's habits. To be polite, you address people as ma'am. That drives me crazy. And the other thing is girl. I don't want to be called a girl because that's kind of infantilizing. But other than that, I've chosen a lot of the roles. Like, I'm a wife, I want to be a mom someday. So I'm not completely separated from society's concept of gender. I just only want to take the roles that I choose. Alright, so the flag. The black and the white represent the absence of gender. The gray represents the partial presence of gender. That's kind of where I am. The green represents non-binary gender identities, which I didn't know that when some random person on the internet just said, "You look non-binary," that it would make me feel so happy. But here I am. I came out this month. I'm a brand new out gender person. Yeah, okay. So let me get to marking lines on my fabric so that I can cut it into strips because I'm going to make patchwork pockets. Without further ado, I'm going to get to that and answer a few of my questions. I'm going to mark 2-inch strips. Huh? I'm really low on ink. I'm gonna go get another pen. So the first question on my list is, what originally got you into costuming / cosplay / living history, etc.? I learned how to sew when I was 10. I didn't really sew all that much. I didn't really get into sewing hardcore until college, and what happened was I was in the opera workshop. They needed a costume person, and I was like, heck, I know how to use a sewing machine, I know how to read a pattern, and I started making costumes for the opera, and then I was like, you know what? I can make clothes that fit me correctly, and I started learning how to alter commercial patterns for myself. I met the guy who would become my husband, and he was like, we should go to the Renaissance Festival, and I went to the Renaissance Festival, and I loved it, and then I was like, I should make something for the Renaissance Festival, and I did research, and I found Morgan Donner's tutorial about how to make a kirtle, and I was like, gee, that doesn't seem so hard. And I started making kirtles, and I've made 6 of them now. My second question is, what is your dream event or photo shoot opportunity? The first event I've planned to go to is Costume College, just because one of my best friends from college lives in Southern California. She's a theater costumer. She loves sewing as much as I do, so we want to go together. I think that is my dream event, going to a costuming event with one of my best friends. We could go anywhere though, and it would be fun. My third question is, who do you look up to / who taught you your crafts? The person who taught me how to use a sewing machine and how to make a knit stitch, basically the first step to all of my crafting endeavors, was my mom. My mom is still one of my best friends. My mom really taught me the basis of what I know. As for how far I've come, most of that is self-taught, lots of YouTube and stuff. And speaking of YouTube, the one person on YouTube that I look up to the most thus far is Courtney from Opus Eleni. She's just an excellent friend and a very good internet mom, and I'm really grateful for the things that she has done for me so far, and I hope that our friendship grows. Yay. Anyway, I'm gonna cut out my binding and my patchwork stripes and answer a few more questions. What project are you proudest of? I'd have to say my green kirtle, because the silhouette that I got with it was pretty spectacular, in my opinion. Which project taught you the most? I would have to say the blue history bounding kirtle I made right before I made my green kirtle. It taught me the importance of having a pattern that fits and not just squeezes you in. Always remember to wash and dry muslin, or else it will shrink. Sometimes you have to start over and make a new pattern if the one you have doesn't really work. I need to cut deeper into my armholes. It taught me a lot of stuff. Drape, draft, or commercial pattern. I've draped one thing in my life. I was pretty happy with it. Primarily I do drafting, I guess, is what I use the most, just because I am freaking cheap. Are you team cut or team trace? When I draft my own patterns, I always draft them without seam allowance, so I just trace around the pattern piece directly onto the fabric. If it's a PDF pattern, I cut around the size that I want, because if I change sizes later, I can just print out another one because I own the PDF. If it is a tissue paper pattern, I will probably cut kind of loosely around the pattern piece and kind of fold back and trace along that. So I sort of do both, but like mostly trace. Pins or pattern weights? Ha! Pins or pattern? I like to live dangerously. I don't use pins or pattern weights when I trace my patterns. My hand is enough. I live on the edge. So there's going to be a lot of cutting, but there's also going to be a lot of hand sewing later, so I'm just going to cut the rest, maybe do a little time lapse. I've got a lot of binding. That's probably too much. I have one flag and two flags for my pockets. They're going to go vertically. Then I have this fabric to back the pockets. It'll be on the outside. And a bunch of extra for my fat quarters, which I will use to line the patchwork so that I don't have fraying seams on the inside of my pockets. I'm going to stitch together my 2-inch strips using 1/4 inch seams. So I should have 1.5 inch stripes. And then I will cut the pocket shape after that.
Three days later.
Hello!
It's another day. I'm gonna work on basting my second pocket together. As you can see, I've already finished one. And continue working on answering these questions. Okie dokie. I believe where I left off was here. What skill would you like to learn? I think it would be really heckin' cool to learn tablet weaving. Another thing that I've always wanted to do is stay making. Before I bind the pocket slit, I have to cut it apart. And hence, that's why I basted. Okay, I'm attaching one side of the binding with a running stitch. It doesn't need to be a very strong stitch because there's not going to be any pressure on the pocket slit, like there will be when I put items into the pocket. How many pieces are lurking in your UFO bin? I don't have a bin, I have a shelf. I have a set of reusable menstrual pads that I started literal years ago, a mock-up for a hooplant, which actually will get finished this year if I have anything to do with it, a mock-up for a World War I era blouse, a mock-up for a World War I era corset, lots of mending projects that I just haven't gotten around to, and who knows, I might never get around to them because I don't even know if they're my style anymore. I'm sure I might even have more things. Oh, I have a shirt that I completed construction on over a year ago. All that's left to do is add buttons and buttonholes. I should probably do that because it is to fit my husband and not for me. Okay, I've got to the point of the slit, so I'm just gonna backstitch it down and show you, hopefully, how precise I can make it. My next question is, which era or genre would you still like to make a costume from? I would have to say that my number one desire, and one that I already have some fabrics for, is some World War I era clothes, specifically from 1916 when they had the full skirts again. The corset is really cool, and the body type that was fashionable at the time was very similar to my own. I'm also really interested in doing 1740s, but peasant wear rather than a robe à la française. I also want to revisit 16th century Flemish garb, because it's really freaking cute and I would like to wear it in public. I'm playing thread chicken and I'm definitely gonna lose. Let me just tie off my running stitches. Alrighty, I'm just gonna whip stitch the binding down on the outside. Although, heck, I did the other pocket the other way. I actually did the running stitch with the right side and then whipped it around on the back. So the pockets will be slightly different. But that's okay, we can have siblings, not twins. What is your biggest sewing or crafting pet peeve? First of all, gatekeeping. Everyone should be able to make awesome costumes with fabric that they can afford regardless of the fiber content. Oh, I just thought of another sewing pet peeve. When you tell someone you sew and they're like, oh, you should sell that. No, I sew for me. It takes too much time and too much money. You wouldn't want to pay my prices anyway. Because I didn't quite get the pocket slit centered, I'm going to measure from this side where I want it to be. That way, maybe I can get it a little bit more symmetrical. I've gotten to the point where I'm basting together my pocket. Here's my next question. I forgot to make a knot in my thread. How has the pandemic changed what I sew and or craft? I don't knit as much because that was my portable project, whereas I knit like 20 things in 2019. In 2020, I think I knit maybe 2. But I sewed a lot more things and I got a lot of clothes made, which was really awesome. I probably will start knitting again as I start to go more places and have like rehearsals and meetings and things, because I use knitting as like a stim, I guess, for my ADHD. What costume would I like to revisit? So I don't have anything like completed that I want to completely rework or anything, but I would say that after I dipped my toes into 16th century Dutch clothing with, you know, like the market girl paintings and stuff, ever since I did that dress, my Hobbit dress, I wanted to actually make like a historically adequate version. I think I will leave the rest of the questions for when I am stitching on the binding. So I'm going to finish this basting process and I will get back to you. The last hand sewing I'm going to do is to backstitch the binding on. I'm using backstitch because it's strong, and when they put stuff into the pocket, I want the bag to hold up, and I'm going to attach it the right way out. Let me just get it started. The next question on my list is, what is the most satisfying technique? And I would have to say hand-bound eyelets. The other most satisfying technique is turning a little square or circle of fabric into a button. Do I pick a project and then procure materials, or collect materials and let them speak to you? Me. I sort of do a combination of things. What I like to do is sort of shop around, and when I find a fabric I like, if it speaks to me and says, this should be this, I buy it. But yeah, usually I like to have the fabric tell me what it is at the store, and then I buy it, if that makes sense. I'm gonna skip the next question so I can put it at the end because it's real important. Do you have any sewing assistants? I certainly do. Let me go get him. Oh, come back, come back. He's mad at me, but this is Escamillo. I have him as a sewing assistant, and one more if you count my husband, who sometimes comes and pesters me.
Yes, he's so cool. It's dinner time. Almost.
Okay, get out of here. Do you sew over your pins or take them out as you go? If I'm sewing on my machine, I usually take them out, with the rare exception for machine sewing. Barefoot, socks, or shoes? Shoes are foot prisons. I don't usually like socks either because they just make my feet sweaty, and then they don't even keep my feet warm once my feet are sweaty. So barefoot it is. I like to feel the pedal. Do you put your pins in parallel to the seam line or perpendicular to the seam line? Perpendicular, always. Final question, the one I skipped from before. What are your goals and plans for the future? So if you watched my most recent video, you may know that I'm planning a YouTube series where I sew a 15th century costume, record 15th century music, and tell you about it. I also mentioned in this video that I didn't know when I was gonna get to these videos. Pretty soon after I recorded that video, I decided I should put my video on the Costume Symposium schedule. I'm going to do my utmost to release the first video of Vox Vestitus 1415 on Sunday of Cozy. I really hope you all tune in to watch and learn a little bit about music history with me. I'm going to get to finishing this pocket and do a little bit of a reveal. Thank you so much for listening to my answers to these questions. If you enjoyed this video and are looking forward to my upcoming projects, please subscribe. If you have any questions about my gender journey, feel free to ask me questions in the comments and I will reply if I have the time and the energy. And please be kind.